Hey, I'm Matthew Giorgio. Head-to-head multiplayer competition can be very motivating and exciting for learners when they're using a business game or simulation, but it's not always recommended. And I'll explain why. Because working with instructors and trainers around the world, I often get requests that somebody wants something specifically to be multiplayer because they feel it's very motivating for students and engaging. And they're mostly right, but it can backfire as well for a couple of reasons. One of the primary reasons is that some people just don't connect well with competition. They turn off, they disengage with competition. And if you're in a learning environment, particularly with younger kids, you need to be conscious of the fact that multiplayer, head-to-head multiplayer, where they're competing against each other, can be problematic. So the way we solve this is we have, as designers of educational games and simulations, is we have some simulations that have head-to-head multiplayer, others that do not, and others that, even though they don't have head-to-head multiplayer, there's still the option of competition, but within the control of the instructor. So that way the instructor can look at their learners, whatever their profile may be, and determine what's going to work best for them. So examples. So head-to-head multiplayer is usually in the case of business simulations where I might run a business, you might run a business, our other classmates or learners in our same cohort would run businesses, and we're all in the same marketplace competing against each other. So we're all manufacturing or producing something, and we're selling it, trying to sell and win the same customers in the same marketplace. So every decision I make affects you and affects everybody else and the market. And that is indeed very exciting and interesting and engaging and makes things very fresh. But when it becomes problematic, when students are disengaged from the competitive aspect of the experience. And again, with education, you have to be careful of this. So the other way to do it is you have a simulation experience that is not head-to-head multiplayer and instead is more focused on the student making good decisions and being successful. So they're not really competing against anyone else. They're really competing against themselves and making good decisions and learning what they need to learn at their pace, at their comfort level, and not feeling like they're being judged by their peers or anyone else from that capacity or compared in that capacity. So that can be very useful in that circumstance, but for the instructor who wants the protection of the lack of head-to-head competition, but still wants the excitement of competition, the other way you can do it is compare scores. So even though the student may be playing on their own individually, competing against themselves, there's still a score that they're generating, which could be a variety of metrics related to that score. And that same thing is being done, that same score is being generated by other students in the same cohort, and the instructor can now compare those scores. And we have dashboards that make this automatic for the instructor, that only the instructor can see. And then the instructor can choose how much of that to share with their students. So the instructor could share the entire leaderboard with no names on it. So that's a great way to allow a student to see how well they're doing, but since their name is not tied to it, no one really knows who's doing well and who isn't. If it's a small group and people would figure that out, another way to do it is maybe just reveal the top performers. So here's the top 3 performers, again, with or without names, depending on your circumstance. And again, that gives every student the ability to compare their performance, but without the problematic aspects of their name being associated and them feeling, they're not doing as well, and it becomes a self-esteem issue. We also have what we call global leaderboards that are also anonymous, where you can go and compare with other people playing the same simulation, who've played the same simulation over the past number of months, and you can compare your performance on those global leaderboards. Anyway, there's some tips on using and comparing head-to-head multiplayer versus individual play. I'm Matthew Giorgio.